It started with the kind of phone call that makes your stomach tighten before you even know why. The woman's voice barely rose above a whisper as she asked if I could come immediately to change every lock in her house. Before I could ask another question, she took a shaky breath and said something that has stayed with me ever since. She said that if he came back, I wasn't to let him inside. There was no anger in her voice, only exhaustion, fear, and the quiet determination of someone making the hardest decision of her life. I had changed thousands of locks over the years, but I already knew this call would change something inside me forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change lives, if you believe everyone deserves a second chance to rebuild after heartbreak, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. I have been a locksmith for almost 20 years, and most people think the job is simple. They imagine cutting keys, replacing locks, and unlocking doors for people who forget their keys inside. What they never see are the stories hidden behind those doors. Every broken lock belongs to a broken moment. Every emergency call comes from someone standing at a crossroads. Houses remember things, even when people try to forget. I learned long ago that my work was never really about metal or keys. It was about safety, trust, and sometimes survival. The address led me to a quiet neighborhood where the houses looked nearly identical. Freshly cut lawns stretched across the street, children rode bicycles in the distance, and nothing about the place suggested fear. Yet the woman waiting on the porch looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. She couldn't have been older than 35, but the weight on her shoulders made her seem much older. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the front door for me one final time before asking me to replace everything. Inside, the house was spotless, almost painfully organized. Family photographs lined the walls, though several frames had been turned face down. A little girl, no older than 7, sat quietly in the corner coloring a picture. She smiled politely at me, but her eyes carried the cautious expression of a child who had learned to measure every adult's mood before speaking. That look broke my heart more than anything else. As I removed the first deadbolt, the woman finally spoke about why she had called. She didn't tell me every detail, and she didn't have to. Some stories reveal themselves through silence more than words. She explained that her husband had left months earlier after years of promises, apologies, and broken trust. Every time he returned, he promised things would be different. Every time she believed him, life became harder. This time, she had finally found the courage to choose peace instead of another apology. She wasn't changing the locks because she hated him. She was changing them because she wanted her daughter to know what safety felt like. While I worked room by room, I noticed small signs of a life interrupted. A bookshelf with half-finished novels. A birthday banner still folded neatly on top of the refrigerator. A cracked coffee mug that someone had carefully glued back together instead of throwing away. Every object seemed to tell the same story. Someone had spent years trying to repair what kept breaking. The little girl eventually wandered over and watched me install the new locks. She asked innocent questions about how keys worked and whether every lock had a different secret. I smiled and explained that every lock has its own key because every home deserves to feel secure. She nodded thoughtfully before saying she hoped this house could finally sleep at night. I nearly dropped my screwdriver. Children should never have to understand fear so well. By the afternoon, every lock had been replaced. I handed the woman 3 new keys. She held them carefully, almost as if they weighed far more than metal ever could. They represented freedom, but freedom often comes wrapped in loneliness. Before I left, she thanked me with tears in her eyes. She said that today wasn't about keeping someone out. It was about letting hope back in. 3 days later, my phone rang again. The caller ID showed the same address. When I arrived, police cars weren't there, and nothing seemed damaged. The woman met me outside looking calmer than before, but her eyes were red from crying. She told me he had come back the previous night. He had knocked for nearly an hour. He pleaded. He apologized. He promised counseling, change, and forever. She listened through the closed door but never unlocked it. The hardest part, she admitted, wasn't hearing his promises. It was hearing her own heart wanting to believe them one more time. She asked me to check the locks because he had tried every window and every door. Thankfully, nothing had broken. The new locks had done exactly what they were supposed to do. They hadn't just secured a house. They had protected a decision made with incredible courage. Weeks passed, and I thought about that family more often than I expected. Then, one Saturday morning, I received another call from the same woman. This time, her voice sounded different. Lighter. Stronger. She didn't need another lock changed. She wanted me to install a small bookshelf in her daughter's bedroom because she had heard I also did handyman work. I agreed. When I entered the house again, everything felt different. The curtains were open, sunlight filled every room, music played softly from the kitchen, and fresh flowers sat on the dining table. The little girl ran excitedly to show me the library card she had just received. Her laughter echoed through the house in a way I hadn't heard before. It was amazing how quickly a home could breathe again once fear finally left. The woman shared that she had started working again after years away from her career. She had joined a support group, made new friends, and slowly rediscovered the person she had forgotten while trying to save someone else. Healing wasn't quick, and some nights were still difficult, but every morning became a little easier than the last. Months turned into nearly a year. One cold autumn afternoon, I saw someone familiar outside a grocery store. It was him. He looked older, thinner, and deeply worn by life. At first, I barely recognized him. He approached me cautiously after recognizing my work van. He admitted he knew exactly who I was. He remembered the day I changed those locks because, in his words, that was the day he finally understood he had lost everything. He didn't ask where they lived. He didn't ask for a key. Instead, he quietly admitted he had entered treatment, stayed sober, found steady work, and spent the past year trying to become someone his daughter could someday respect. He knew forgiveness wasn't something he deserved simply because time had passed. He only hoped that one day she would know he had finally changed for himself instead of pretending to change for someone else. I never told the woman about meeting him. It wasn't my story to interfere with. Several months later, she called once more. This time, she simply invited me to her daughter's 8th birthday party because, she said, I had unknowingly become part of the day their lives changed. I almost didn't go. But I'm glad I did. The house was filled with balloons, laughter, neighbors, and homemade cake. The little girl hugged me tightly and proudly showed me the bookshelf we had installed together, now overflowing with books. Her mother smiled with a confidence I hadn't seen during that first terrifying visit. Then she quietly told me something that surprised me. She had agreed to let her daughter's father meet her again, but only in supervised visits after many months of consistent effort, counseling, and accountability. She wasn't reopening the old door. She was allowing a carefully guarded window of hope, one built on actions instead of promises. For the first time, I realized that changing locks had never been about keeping people out forever. Sometimes, it was about creating the space necessary for healing to begin. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe for more emotional stories, and let us know in the comments what part moved you the most. Special request, before this story ends, please comment with one word, hope, if you believe real change is proven through actions, not promises. As I drove away from that birthday party, I glanced at the spare keys hanging from my work van. Every key opens something, but some keys do far more than unlock doors. They unlock courage. They unlock new beginnings. They unlock the strength people never knew they had until life forced them to find it. I never forgot the woman's words from that first phone call. At the time, they sounded like the end of a love story. Looking back, I realized they were actually the beginning of a different one, a story about a mother choosing peace for her child, a little girl learning what safety feels like, and even a broken man discovering that true change begins only after excuses end. Some doors deserve to stay closed. Others deserve to be opened only when trust has been rebuilt one honest step at a time. And sometimes, the strongest act of love isn't letting someone back into your house. It's protecting the people inside until they can smile without fear again. That day reminded me that while locks can secure a home, courage is what truly turns a house into a place where hope finally feels safe enough to live.